So I wanted to share a little bit, um, motivated by the passing of Archbishop Desmond Tutu last week on the 26th of December. And I would just confess to say that I really did not know much at all about him. And my experience of him has been through the reading, first in our book group, our secular, so to speak, book group. And now our sitting group is reading the Book of Joy, which is a conversation recorded conversation between the Archbishop and the Dalai Lama. And many of you may be familiar with that. Um, so they got together on the occasion of the Dalai Lama's 80th birthday. And so this must be a few years ago. And the topic was joy, and how to find joy in a changing world. And I was struck by, well, a lot of things, and that's partly what I want to share with you. Um, but one of the things because in the person who's like moderator between the two of them, making comments between all of their conversations, really emphasizes a lot their sense of joy in one another. And I was thinking that I think when you're any kind of spiritual teacher, it can be a lonely place. And maybe the more and more renowned one is, in a sense, the lonelier and lonelier it gets, especially because of people's projection of how perfect they think you are. And so it just struck me that part of their joy in one another is that joy of was that joy of fellowship, and the sense that they could, quote unquote, sort of let their hair down with one another and tease one another, and also have this sense of common values and common worldview in a certain kind of way, coming from very different traditions. So that was something that really struck me in reading the book. And then the other was, I was surprised how much I really resonated with the Archbishop's perspectives on things. And there was uh, he was married for turns out 66 years, which is pretty phenomenal. And they actually renewed their vows when they had been married for 60 years in 2015, and had 4 children. And so his perspective is somewhat different, than the Dalai Lama being a monastic person, although the Dalai Lama talked very openly about how glad he was, in a certain sense, that he was, and he said it in this way, his opportunity to come out of a gilded cage of as a result of being a refugee from his actual, his home, original home. So he's certainly been a person of the world in a lot of ways as well. But what really struck me in reading the book was, over and over again, um, the Archbishop would bring this sort of, in a little bit sense of loftiness into this very, very much humanity. So saying, kind of these aspirational things, and then, yes, but we need to really give ourselves a break when we're not perfect, and that actually our imperfection is our shared humanity. So I just found myself very heartened by sort of the point counterpoint kind of conversation back and forth between the two of them, in the way that Desmond Tutu would over and over and over again bring up that sense of shared humanity and humility. One thing I just wanted, because I read a bunch of stuff in Wikipedia, and you can as well, but I just got a kick out of, in terms of that thing of spiritual teachers being, people having all kinds of ideas about them. So apparently, some folks were going to host the archbishop and asked him what his eating preferences were, and she said, "Think of a 5-year-old, that he likes marshmallows and sweets and fried food." So I thought that was, and also just great that she felt comfortable to say that. I appreciated that. So in this conversation between the two of them, about joy, um, it's just, I've just spent, I think, the last 48 hours so much thinking about this word joy and what does it really mean. And there's a whole bunch of definitions in the text, by actually a researcher that had a bunch of different reflections and definitions. I think the most interesting aspect is both of them saying that actually joy is our fundamental nature. And I find that to be um, a very interesting hypothesis. And so, what does that really mean? For our joy is our fundamental nature. And for us, in Zen practice, that's the basic thing, is looking into what is our fundamental nature, and to consider that this aspect of being fully at home in the present, exactly as things are, with the sense of how unbounded and unconditioned and unfixed that actually is. To consider that fundamental nature uh, could be joy. And I think that, I think of it as in the verse of the Kesa, uh, about an open field of benefaction. Um, so part of the reason I bring all this up, besides everything I've already said, is that my own intention for myself, uh, for 2022, for coming into the new year, is to welcome uh, love, joy, peace, uh, contentment, welcome it and cultivate it, knowing that there's always going to be difficulty. Um, and what led me to having this resolution for the new year, is noticing how much, especially in the latter part of the year that has just passed, um, I was fighting with the circumstances of my life and feeling quite overwhelmed by them. And, I would say maybe kind of victimized by them in a certain way. And, and, actually, my daughter said something to me that really, it was harsh, but got my attention, of which led me into this whole conversation with myself about taking responsibility for welcoming the circumstances of my life. And actually, Cezanne and I talked about it quite a bit. And the thing that came up for me was curiosity. So I'm going to share with you the 8 pillars of joy that the Dalai Lama and the Archbishop outlined. And I have taken the I don't know what the word is, but I've taken the prerogative of adding a 9th, which is curiosity. So the 8 pillars of joy that they talked about are perspective, which I think is kind of fundamental to our inquiry, in Zen practice. Perspective, humility, humor, and acceptance. And they talked about those as being kind of more of the mind, I don't necessarily agree with this dichotomy, but that's how that was discussed. So perspective, humility, humor, and acceptance. And then of the heart, forgiveness, gratitude, compassion, and generosity. So these 8 pillars feel, you know, I didn't go point by point, but I think they could be quite aligned probably with the um, the Eightfold Path. And I'm just going to show you a friend of mine for my birthday put these on a bookmark for me. So I have a very good way of being able to look at them regularly. They're up on my altar. And why I wanted to add curiosity is because it feels like in this, what I'm talking about kind of fighting with the circumstances of my life and feeling sort of put upon by them, and also um, a kind of a funny kind of arrogance that this is worse than anybody else has it. Um, and a way to work with that really has seemed to me to actually get curious about what my real experience is. Um, Rather than the basic thing of aversion and attachment. So pushing away what is here and causing myself suffering and others around me, for sure. And that's what my daughter was pointing out as well. So I also, in thinking about these 8 pillars, I was, they also talk about in the conversation between the Dalai Lama and the Archbishop, the obstacles to joy. And they outline them as, which I think we're all going to be able to relate to: fear, anxiety, stress, frustration and anger, sadness and grief. And I was reflecting on what so many of us have shared, and in our sitting group in Sweetwater Sangha, um, the manifestations of these obstacles of self-doubt, not feeling good enough, comparing ourselves to others, um, insecurity, guilt, feeling inadequate, um, not feeling like we can open ourselves up to intimacy in our lives. And this is our shared humanity. This is the stuff that we feel alone with, and it's totally common, right? And it felt like those things that we express are these manifestations of obstacles to joy, obstacles to contentment, obstacles to peace. So to feel like the antidote is these, I'm going to say 9 pillars, um, is super helpful in terms of being able to turn towards what we suffer with. And it's not going to make anything go away, right? We're just going to have difficulty. It's inevitable. And part of just, I think that's maybe that 4th step of the acceptance, that stuff is going to be hard sometimes. It's just going to suck at times. And accepting that, not that my life should be different than it is because it doesn't feel good right now.
Can you say that one more time?
My life should be different than it is because it doesn't feel good right now. So this is basic Buddhism. We all know this, but somehow, at least myself, and I I would venture to say many of us just need to hear it over and over and over again. Um, and the great thing is there is a path of practice, and that's all I'm offering up as the 8 pillars of joy is one way to look at that. We have many formulations that we could say, the not knowing, bearing witness, and loving action is another formulation. Um, the Eightfold Path is another formulation. The 8 awarenesses of the enlightened person is another formulation. But it's really just what's striking me anyway is it's kind of accepting full responsibility for engaging with our life as it is. And I think that's what I came to see towards the end of the year, that I was somehow waiting for something else to swoop in and rescue me. And I hope I'm not being too personal. I'm just assuming that a lot of the ways that I feel and think are not unusual. So I hope you find the same. Um, so this aspect of the Dalai Lama called it mental immunity, and basically what he's talking about is really taking full responsibility for our lives and doing what we need to do, just like taking immunizations and taking our vitamins and getting exercise and all, is to build our immunity. And so this is, how we, through practice, how we kind of build our sort of emotional, mental, spiritual uh, strength, yes, confidence to actually be able to be with things as they are. Um, and I guess maybe the last thing I want to kind of mention in that is when we were sitting during Sesshin, and we were reciting the Bodhisattva vows, it it just hit me that um, you know beings are numberless. We vow to save them, and it just hit me so strong that I am saved by that Bodhisattva vow. I am saved from this sense of isolation as this individual self-enclosed self by being compelled to see my life as interconnected with everything. So I think I kind of had always seen that as like on some kind of level, this sort of like self-sacrificing vow. And I just went, this vow saves me from myself in a certain kind of way. So I have probably 4 pages of notes that I won't trouble you with. My experience of what's wonderful about getting asked to do a talk is the practice of studying and trying to distill down. Like at one point, I wrote myself the question, what is the point? What is the point? So one thing I wrote down here is if self-absorption is the cause of suffering, the antidote is compassion and engagement and perspective and seeing self as other and other as self. So I think I'll finish there. See if anybody has any comments. And again, great gratitude to Roshi um, in every way. But thank you for giving me the opportunity to give this talk, and thank you to Cho and Kosei and everybody who's maintaining this center. It's incredible to be able to keep this practice going. And Echo here, founding member, say Joe, lots of years, everybody. Anyway, thank you so much.